mindful of our surroundings and not just on us and helping ourselves, but also taking care of others, and so forth. So, DeVonna, you had some comments and you had some things you wanted to share and a little bit to touch on that area of
being a survivor of domestic violence and having had a partner who was an addict. I had to seek help and people had to seek to help me. So I say be available. I had my best girlfriend at the time watch my back so I could pack my car so I could flee the state because I'd had a panic attack for the first time in my life. I was no longer in control of my body and I had this little being that I was responsible for. So I ran, fight or flight. And I've never been one to run. But the reality is sometimes that's what's best. Now, I talked to the person that I've had these experiences with previously. We're on good terms now. That took 20 years. So some things we expect it to happen right away. It doesn't always. But if you're in a domestic violence situation or someone that's in a situation, the best thing to do is just to, if you're an affectionate person, put your arms around them, say, I'm here for you. I know you're having a rough time. I'm not sure exactly what it is because I don't live your life, but I'm here for you. You need me. You want to go for a cup of coffee. You want to say nothing to me. That's fine. You just need to go somewhere. Just call me. I'll be there. And as long as you're there for the people that you care about, they need that support and they can help rise themselves out of the situation. I called the United Way Helpline, and that's one of the things that I tell anyone and everyone. The United Way Helpline is a clearinghouse of the community's resources. So I called them in Texas, I've called them in Florida, and so depending on what your needs are, they've helped me find a church that was giving parenting classes and maternity clothes when I was unexpectedly pregnant. They have helped me get attached to a program in Houston, the George something, not Bush, but somebody else, George Walker, is a very famous black man. And this program was designed for women who had children, who were in domestic violence situations that could not afford their first month's rent and their deposit. And they set me up with towels and an apartment and helped me find the apartment and get me all set up. And I got out of the situation that I was in. And ultimately, like I said, I had to flee the state because just getting an apartment in the same city wasn't far enough away. So call the United Way Helpline. Let them know what you're looking for. I need dog food. I need food for myself. I need, whatever it is, your situation. If you're desperate or not desperate and you don't want to be desperate, reach out to the United Way. They're there because they want to help. They want to help make a difference and they want to help inspire change in your life if you're in need of it. Vice versa. If you're able to give.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And DeVonna, and thank you for sharing your story on the air with our listeners because you just never know what someone might be going through. You never know that this is that there's something that can be done and it's like I said, the United Way Helpline. There's that. For that. Then there's other sources as well. If you can't always call the cops, you can't, some people are afraid of that. A friend can do it for you or send someone to kind of, I need you, me and my husband are going to stop by and we'll watch and okay, he's going to be gone. Okay. Even if they happen to come back and they leave work early or wherever it is they go during the day, that spouse or abuser, that person just said, okay, I will be there. Even if you're a little person, I've helped people in a domestic violence situation where I was like, sometimes, you jump in the middle and, you could be fearing too, but as long as you kind of keep a distance, you watch it while they're in the house, you say, just get the essentials. If you have a kid, get them. If you got a pet, you don't want to leave the pet in the situation. Yeah, you took the dog or the cat. Take them, get them out too. Just get those key essentials, get all the living beings out of the house and go. And then, like I said, you can always, whatever the local, if it's United Way, if they don't have a center nearby, every little town, even a small ass town, and we're allowed to curse on the air, will have something. Will have something that you can do, and in times of COVID, that was really hard because people didn't want to get close to it. Some people said, well, you know what? I don't care. A life is a life. I'm going to go help that person. I'll just throw on a mask. I'll throw on a face shield, whatever. This is my best friend. This is an old friend. I don't care. Just jump in my car, sit in the back seat, whatever. If you don't have a car to help them, you said, you know what? We're just going to grab your stuff and haul ass down the sidewalk, and just gather some money and call a cab. Figure out, you'll find a way to be, looking for those signs. And one thing I kind of want to just touch on a little bit, like I said, you found ways to look at things. I think it's, as we go into your thoughts, Kristin, maybe you could talk about like things you can do to be mindful of that person, seeing the signs. If you want to touch a little bit on that, or if you want to touch a little bit about how to see the signs. Like, how do I see, especially if someone's hiding it so well? How do you, but I got a feeling something's wrong, the three of us, me, DeVonna, and Kristin, we have kind of very highly empathic natures, so we can kind of use that to how you do to see. And sometimes you might be wrong, but hey, at least you tried, So I'll let you touch a little on that, and then, any other tips on getting out of a bad situation before we move on to Andrew and wrap this topic.
Okay. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, but I'm going to speak the truth. I've been married to a psychologist for 43 years, and during that time, we've had a lot of friends go through a lot of rough times, rough patches, and they'll tell me, and I have most frequently referred them to my husband and for professional help. And one thing I had learned that was shocking to me at first, and now I understand it, but they would go through sessions, the time would pass, and they'd be fine again. The marriage would work out, or whatever the problem, it would work out. And then they no longer wanted to be my friend anymore. And you might be surprised at how common that is. Exactly. If you offer help, there's two things. One, if you offer help, and two, if you speak the truth, you better have one foot in the saddle, because it may not work out with all this gratitude that you're expecting for having put that out there. It's just very common. They just don't want to be associated with that point in time in their lives. So you can't go out and do something that you really, really think you're doing somebody a big favor, and you're going out on a limb for them. Just do that for itself. Don't expect that they're going to come back and be forever grateful. In many cases, you lose the friendship totally. So that is something to prepare for.
Exactly. Well, you made a good point, and I'm really glad. I don't think you're being a Debbie Downer on that at all. I think it's good that actually brings up the part about it's okay not to have that positive outlook sometimes, because in a way what you just said was positive, because in a different perspective. Especially in domestic violences, there's people where you always hear about they go back. And as a person who cares, you worry about, well, one day they're going to go back and you're never going to hear from them again. But you know what? You did something. You did something to, you reached out. You referred them to your husband. You looked at signs. And then they chose that, I don't want to be your friend because you did this. And you know what? They're good. They worked out. And maybe that abuser is, deep down, there is good in people. But whatever the reason that makes them maybe they're narcissistic and makes them domineering, it makes them abusive, whatever it is in their heads that makes them that way, but then that person loves that person. So that's something you have to deal with, you know. They always say, you know, there's that saying about, you know, if someone loses somebody, or like, let's say they lose a child to like a murder or whatever, and then they seek revenge on, well, I'm going to go after them because the cops aren't helping. They say, well, if you're going on a revenge trip and avenging, dig 2 graves. You know, it's just like 1 foot in the saddle. You know, sometimes people aren't gonna. They're, you know, you gave them the gratitude. You showed empathy, and you know what? But you did reach out. You did something to help them. And who knows? Like I said, that person, what if down the road they do come back and they said, you know, I'm sorry, I excommunicated you from our lives. Maybe they need you. That's one way you could say, well, you know, I'm going to be here. You know, I won't turn, you know, like I always tell people, I said, I'm not giving up on you, but sometimes you do have to step away, you know, and if they come back, you know, that's another form. People always talk about tough love, and when it comes to suicide, sometimes people say, well, they've been threatening for years. Well, you never know if that's the day that person actually does it. And I'm like, sometimes it'll bother me. I'll go, ugh, you know, I'm on the ledge there with you, trying to talk you down, but then sometimes it drains you when you're helping someone so much and then they just keep going down and they keep relapsing. And sometimes you just have to step back, but know you did do something. You know, I've had friends, you know, not mentioning names, that I've gone where I've been physically drained, and I'm like, you know what? But I'm there. If they reach out, I'm just not going to go down this part of the road with them, but I'm going to be here. I will listen. They can call me, they can text me, whatever, but I'm not going to drain myself if they're not going to listen, if they're not, you know, whatever, because there's people that they'll scream at you. They'll take you down a hard thing, and you have to separate that. So yeah, you bring up a good point that it's not always going to work out. DeVonna, you have any thoughts on that a little bit, just from coming out? Like sometimes you know people go back, and you know, any quick thoughts before we go to Andrew?
Excuse me. Well, yes, and I tried to make the relationship that I talked about. I tried to make it work several times, especially because there was a child involved, and I didn't know my biological father. And so I thought it was real important for my son to know his biological father. But it took 18 years before that could even, actually 21, before that could even start to come around, because that person had to change. That person had to better themselves and be in a place where he was ready to be able to be there for someone else and learn how to be there for himself. The most important thing is learning to love yourself. When you keep going back to that situation, yes, you love that person and you may love that child, but what is the best for all parties involved, really? And that's what we have to ask ourselves when we're in that situation. We may not want the outcome as it is. I didn't want to walk away. I didn't want to run. I didn't want to leave. I wanted my child. I wanted the picket fence, and, you know, so what? I was in an apartment. I don't care. I'll take a picket fence around the apartment. But you know what I'm saying is that I had an idea of what it was going to be like, and that is nothing what it was like. And so we have to let go of our attachment to what we want it to be or what we think it should be, and really look at what it is. Is this person loving me? Am I loving myself by being here? If the answers to those questions are no, please don't go back. Please, there is help out there. You can find it. And there are friends that are willing to help support you, even if in the long run, unfortunately, you decide, oh, well, I don't want to be associated with that. But a person that's really elevating themselves and really changing wouldn't push someone away like that. They would grab a hold of that person and want that person's support. So we all also have things affect us at different times. So what Kristin said to someone 10 years ago might not take effect until 2 more years down the road. So 12 years later, that person is remembering what Kristin did for them, what Kristin said or Chris said for them. And sometimes that's all it takes too, is to plant that seed in someone that you care about because later on it will stay there. It will come back up. And that person will have that seed to grab a hold of